Okay, so we're going to try something new and different today. And anytime we try something new or different, I get scared and confused and worried, but we're going to try and hope for the best. So you're going to watch this video. What I write, you're going to write, and we're going to take notes on converting fractions to decimals to percents. The good news with this is you already know how to do this because you learned how to do it last year. Unfortunately, on the test, there is a portion of the test where I can't let you use a calculator. So we are going to have to do a little math, if you will, today. So first thing you're going to do is we're going to label this triangle. My handwriting's terrible on this. This is not Khan Academy. I don't know how the guy writes so neatly. So we're just going to work through it and make your handwriting more neat than mine. So we're going to start with labeling this triangle. So the top of my triangle, I'm going to write the word fraction. And again, my handwriting, not the best. I'm going to go to this corner and I'm going to write the word decimal. And then I'm going to go to this corner and I'm going to write the word percent. If I move too fast, you can always pause the video. So we're going to talk about how we can move from a fraction to a decimal to a percent, and then we'll kind of go back and forth between the two. So if I want to know how to move from a fraction to a decimal, all you have to do is divide. I wonder if I can write sideways. I can write sideways. When you divide a fraction to make it a decimal, I always say your top number goes in the house. So what does that mean? If you scroll down on your page, it says fraction to decimal. So I'm going to give you an example of how you can turn a fraction into a decimal. So let's do 2/5. So in my box, I'm going to write 2/5. And my goal here is to turn it into a decimal. So I'm going to take my top number and I'm going to write it inside my house. So we're dividing, we're not doing square roots, so use your division sign. I'm going to put my 2 and I'm going to put my 5. You might want to write small because you don't have a lot of room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself, easy division here, does 5 go into 2? And it doesn't. So since it doesn't, I'm going to put a 0. I'm going to put a decimal here because I ran out of numbers, and I'm going to put a 0. Does 5 go into 20? Yes. 5 goes into 20 4 times. I know that 4 times 5 is 20. I have 0 left over, so my decimal is 0.4. Terrible 4. That is my answer. And I'm done. So anytime you want to turn a fraction into a decimal, all you have to do is divide. There are some fractions that you automatically know what they are as decimals. If that's the case, you don't have to show me work. A really good example of this is 3/4. I would almost bet that 95% of you know what 3/4 is as a decimal. And if you don't, remember it, learn it. But we would do the same thing. We would say, this doesn't work. I'm going to put my decimal. I'm going to add a 0. 4 goes into 37 times. It's going to give me 28. I'm going to have 2 left over. I need to add another 0. I'm going to bring it down. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And I'm at 0. So 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75. Which most of you already knew. Again, if you know how to turn, or if you already have it memorized what the fraction is, you don't have to show me math. That's common sense. You know what it is. I'm going to go back up to my triangle. So we learned how to take a fraction and turn it into a decimal. So now I'm going to talk about how do I turn a decimal into a percent. So to move a decimal into a percent, all I'm going to do is I am going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. And you might even want to circle, underline, smiley face, the word right. If you remember, a percent is always something over 100. When you think percent, think 100. Think percent, think 100. So if I'm going to make a decimal into a percent, all I'm going to do is this. If I have 0.4, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to go 1 place, two places. Now, if you notice, there's nothing here. Since there's nothing here to fill that empty gap, you're just going to put a 0. My new decimal is sitting here. I don't need this 0 in front. I have 40%. And I'm done. What would happen, though, if I had something like this? 0.3333, and the 3's just keep going forever and ever. This is also known as a repeating decimal. Same thing. I'm going to take my decimal and I'm going to move it 2 places. And there's my new decimal. So I have 33.3. Round if you need to. If I look to the right, I'm going to leave it a 3 because I only want to go one place past the decimal. So 33.3%, and I'm good. Same thing, if I had 7.75, move it 2 places to the right. That's where my new decimal is. I'm at 75%. I think that one's pretty easy. If I go back to the top of my page, the last thing is going to be a fraction or a percent to a fraction. So to make a percent into a fraction, I just told you that a percent is always, 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 always out of 100. So I am going to make a fraction, and the bottom of my fraction is going to be 100 every single time because the percent's always out of 100. Whatever my decimal was, whatever my percent was, I'm just going to write it here. So on the top, I'm going to write my percent. And I'm done. Make sure you simplify. So if I want to go from a percent to a fraction, I skipped this. We'll come back to this. If I want to go from a percent to a fraction, let's say I have 40%. Drop the percent sign because you're not going to write a fraction with a percent sign. The bottom is going to be 100. The top is going to be 40. And then from here, you want to simplify. I think I can divide them both by 20. So that would be 2. And that would be 5. So 2/5. If I was going to do 75%, I would have 75 over 100. And that's going to simplify into 3 over 4. You can divide them both by 25. If you ended up with something like this, 33.3%, you would write 33.3 on the top. Remember, lose the percent sign, and then the bottom would be 100. You can't simplify this, so you're just going to leave it like that. And it's cool if you have the decimal there, or I would be cool with just 33 over 100. Either way is fine. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is how to turn a percent to a decimal. So when we took our notes, and I know it's kind of all jumbled together, and hopefully your writing's way better than mine. If we're going this direction, so from decimal to percent, we're going to move our decimal to the right. If we decide that we want to work backwards, so we want to go from a percent to a decimal, we're doing the exact same thing if we're working this way, but this time instead of moving to the right, you're going to move your decimal to the left. So if I start with a percent, I'm moving my decimal to the left, and you're going to go 2 places, just like you did the other time too. So let's move down to our notes. And again, pause if I move too fast. So if I start with the percent, I start with 45%. You know that if there's no decimal, the decimal is going to go on the end. So I'm going to drop the percent sign, and I'm going to go 2 places to the left. So that's going to give me 0.45. If I had 56%, decimals here, 2 places to the left, 0.56. The tricky ones are going to be like if you had 3%. So my decimal's at the end, and I still have to move it 2 places. So now I have an empty spot. So I have to fill that empty spot with a 0. This is not 0.3. That's not the same thing as this. This is really the same thing as 30 or 30%. So make sure that if you're moving it 2 places to the left and you don't have anything, you put the 0 in front of the number that you already had there. So that's how you turn a percent to a decimal. So I gave you a couple examples. I want you to flip your paper over to the back. So when you flip your paper over to the back, I have given you some common fractions that you should know as decimals, like off the top of your head. So 1/2, hopefully you're already doing this and you're like, okay, why is she telling me this? I know this is 0.5. I know 1/4 is 0.25. I've talked about this one. I know this is 0.75. 1/3 is always going to be 0.3 and it's going to repeat. So that means it's threes for days. It never ends. And then this one, 2/3 is always going to be 0.6 repeating. Same thing goes on for days, never ends. I've left the rest of these boxes empty, and I did that in case you come across or you automatically know fractions that I haven't included. Sometimes people have their tenths memorized. Sometimes people have their fifths memorized. A lot of times those are really easy to figure out. But this is how you convert fractions into decimals. So from here, you should have a task that you need to complete. If you didn't get all the notes, if you didn't write everything down, rewatch, rewind. If you get confused and you're not sure, rewatch, rewind. Don't be afraid. As you go through and you're working and you start to memorize, add to your table of stuff that you automatically know. If you automatically know it, I don't need to see your work. But on the test, you're going to have to be able to identify and know what these are without a calculator. So without a calculator, you should be able to simplify from fraction to decimal to percent.